Hi, I'm Conrad Marshall, and from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, welcome to Season 6 of Good Weekend Talks, a magazine for your ears featuring in-depth conversations with fascinating people from sport and politics, science and culture, business and beyond. Every week you can download new episodes in which top journalists from across our newsrooms talk to compelling people about the definitive stories of the day. In this episode, we speak with Kara Swisher, the American journalist, author and podcaster who's been covering the tech sector for 30 years and now finds herself at the epicentre of public debate over the convergence of tech and power in the new Trump administration. Swisher hosts the podcasts On with Kara Swisher and Pivot, both of which are part of the Vox Media New York magazine stable. Her tech sector memoir, Burn Book, subtitled A Tech Love Story, was released last year, and she's visiting Australia next week for speaking engagements at Adelaide Writers' Week on March 3 and 4, as well as the Sydney Opera House's All About Women Festival on March 5, and the Wheeler Centre in Melbourne on March 6. And hosting this conversation, which covers everything from the nexus between Elon Musk and Donald Trump to where Swisher finds solace and hope right now, is Good Weekend editor Katrina Strickland.
Thanks, Conrad, and welcome, Kara.
Thank you.
Kara, you started out as a tech reporter and through dint of circumstance, you're now pretty much a political commentator as well as a tech one, thanks to the converging of politics and tech.
Yeah, not so happy about that.
Yeah, exactly. Looking back to your kind of work as a beat journalist in the 90s, how much of a sense did you have that tech would become like such a defining industry of the times and that it would converge so spectacularly with politics?
Well, during COVID, I moved to Washington, D.C. For family reasons, but also because I sort of had the sense that tech needed to deal with regulation and with cars, space, a lot of the cancer research, all the different things that it was doing. It would require a lot of government regulation. And before that, there hadn't been any. So one of my goals was to come here and convince lawmakers that there had to be some sort of guardrails on these tech billionaires because increasingly, they were going to become involved in politics. So I was aware, I hadn't spent a lot of time on regulation, some when they were trying to do crazy things. And this, of course, around Facebook, there was always something, nefarious they were up to. And so it was one of the side things I did, but now it occupies everything I'm doing, obviously, because of Elon Musk.
Yeah. And how much of I know with your podcasts are increasingly talking about Trump and Musk and politics. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's just going to continue for 4 years, or do you think that it's the beginning and it's all so crazy that, you go back to kind of talking about tech and AI and all other things in a few months?
Yeah, it would be nice. But no, I think we're in the middle of a constitutional crisis in this country. I don't think people realize it. I think they do. The people are paying attention to. And so this is a question of whether Trump using Musk and Musk using Trump also are going to be able to pull off a lot of things they are attempting, including quashing the Congress, quashing the judiciary. That was their effort today, talking about the lack of need to listen to courts here in this country. And then just sort of buzzsawing through the government as they please and getting rid of things they don't like without a lot of consultation. So no, I think I'm going to be here a while. I think we're in a very dangerous period in the United States. And so I think a lot of tech journalists now are very helpful in terms of reporting this and what they're doing exactly with the data, what they're doing to try to put AI into government and everything else. So it's a good place to be as a tech reporter.
Yeah, because I guess that's part of it, isn't it? It's grown so quickly, partly because most of us don't understand it. We haven't understood exactly about the algorithms and how it all works.
Well, I don't know. Do you know how to fly? You know how to fly a plane? You don't need to understand it. You need to understand power. That's all it is. I don't know how gas is made. I don't know how a car works, but you need to understand that this is a group of people, unelected, who are doing whatever they want and has got a grip on our public, including in Australia, in ways that are, you thought Rupert Murdoch was a problem. These people are 20 times the problem. I mean, he has enormous sway there in Australia, or had, or I don't know if he still does. I assume he does. But it's nothing compared to what's happening with these people. They have control over communications, over social media, over media, and everything else. And so it's a really very different group of people that have taken control of so many parts of the societal ecosystem.
And so what do you think is going to be the most effective way? I know that you've said on your podcast recently on Pivot, we can't disassociate, like we have to keep paying attention. But what do you think the most of us should actually, well, let's talk Americans first. What should Americans be doing?
Well, I mean, the Australians are doing more, right, around safety and everything else. You guys are way ahead of the U.S. in that. And so are every other country, every other free democracy in the world. It's way ahead and understand the danger. I think you guys really do perceive it. What should we be doing? Well, there's a lot there, the speed at which the Trump administration has moved. They had a cookbook. It's called Project 2025 that they had disavowed, with quotes are following to the letter right now. Oddly enough, they lied about that. I always thought they were going to use it. But they're going through the playbook, which is to take control of agencies through data, through technology, ignore Congress. Now they're about to ignore the courts. And if people protest, they're going to call up the military. Like this is like they've got a plan, and it's slowly working into place. And so there's a lot people could do. You could say you could sue, but today the Vice President of the United States said we don't have to pay attention to the courts. He essentially said that, and he was echoed by Elon Musk. Why should we pay attention to the courts? Essentially, so if we can't enforce the rules that the courts bring down, then you have to go to people protesting in the streets, and that's a problem. That should happen, but when it happens, there's nothing to stop Donald Trump from declaring martial law or whatever he thinks is happening, and we'll see where that goes. Now, the issues are whether this is going to affect the general public. People sort of become aware of it. If the economy goes down, if things go on too long, only so much they can do to control this country. It's a huge country, and so. This chaos is really what you rely on, is that there's too much chaos happening and people don't want to live like that. People didn't vote for chaos. They voted for cheaper egg prices, presumably. And instead they're getting this. So I think it'll just be, this is going to go on for a while for this country. And then it'll affect the global economy, of course. But in Australia, just pass laws that don't allow someone like Elon Musk to run roughshod through your government, I suppose. And that's what all governments should be doing right now, protecting the ability of their legislative bodies to act and have enforcement powers.
So what would that law look like?
Well, it depends. I mean, I don't know. I think some years from now, when this is all over, they're going to restrain the power of the executive. That would be my guess. Or to put in place an enforcement power where they don't put, for example, in our country, the U.S. Marshal Service, who would carry out any court orders, is under the Department of Justice, which is under a woman named Pam Bondi, like your beach. And she is under the orders of Donald Trump. Most attorney generals are independent in our history, but not this one. And so that's a problem. Maybe moving the U.S. Marshal Service out of the purview of the Justice Department, something like that, for example, if that happens, which it will happen. Stuff. There's all kinds of things that'll happen later after a lot of pain. Where they'll change laws, and it's mostly in restricting the power of the presidency, I guess. Yeah. You have a different system than we do, but we have a very strong chief executive at the helm, and he's becoming even stronger.
And then, in terms of Australia's laws in particular, or our legislation and codes to try and govern social media, I know we've put in legislation to say that under 16s can't use social media, depending on results of our federal election. It might or might not come in at the end of this year. But some would argue that they'll just find ways around that. What's your response to that? That it won't be effective because young people are innovative and they just find ways around this kind of thing?
People find their ways around murder. I don't know what to say. I mean, that just doesn't mean you don't put laws into place. Certainly they can. That's not a reason not to do something, because people will find their ways around it. I think you always have to, as a government, as a people, say this is our rules of the road, and people will violate them, and then you come after them. I mean, I just think without the rules in place to start with, we didn't have stop. I go through stop signs all the time. It doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and I know the message from our government is please stop at this intersection, right?
So the dissuasive kind of effect, yeah.
Yeah, you have to put rules into place. It says who you are as a society. I mean, you want to be, who are you as a group of people? Everything runs roughshod. Is that what your society is? If that's the case, that's pretty sad, essentially. But, this is why we have government. This is why we have everything we have, essentially, because it's a way to understand how we put ourselves together, and we have to do that, of course.
And do you think with social media, there's so much about the damage, particularly to young people, is there a chance at all that, it will, their business model will be disrupted by people just deciding that they're bored with it, moving on to something else entirely? Or do you think it's too addictive for that to ever happen? Or it's too ingrained now in society?
It's not just addictive, it's ingrained, it's necessary. No, I don't think it's going away. Is sugar going away? No, it's not. I don't think so. They can try all they want. I mean, it's an addictive thing, and not just addictive, it's necessary. And not just necessary, it's impossible to look away from. And it's important to business. It's important to economy. So no, it's not going anywhere. So the only choice we have is to try to determine what its impact is and then put the correct guardrails around it. And we're not talking about tons of them, but they don't have any. They don't have any guardrails whatsoever. I mean, they have it in Australia, but they don't have them other places, and they can just grow their businesses. We could allow pharmaceutical companies to dump poison into the river, I guess, but we don't, right? Mm-hmm. We don't. And if they do, we fine them, we arrest them. So I guess we could let people do things as much as they want, but I don't think that's an advisable way to run a country.
It's kind of become part of the whole culture war, though, hasn't it? It's not just a logical discussion anymore. It's kind of woven into this whole allowing people to do what they want.
Well, I guess are you allowed to murder people? Are you allowed to pour poisons into the atmosphere? No, it's just kind of ridiculous. It's kind of a juvenile, very typical of the men who run Silicon Valley. They have, they're in arrested development, and they are all men. I'm sorry to tell you. I mean, I have 3 sons. I don't mean to impugn men, but it is all men, and they all act like they have no guardrails. And you're seeing this writ large by Elon Musk's behavior with the government. He's just rolling over everybody. He doesn't care. And that's, you get what you got, essentially.
And you've been talking to and observing the tech bros, for want of a better word, for 3 decades. Do you think and I know that you had a better relationship with Elon back in the day, do you think they got corrupted by power, or do you think they were always, as you say, arrested development, kind of like, what's the evolution, do you think?
Well, evolution is they've got richer and richer and more powerful. They have points of view. They decided, given how rich they are, they're going to impose on the rest of society. Each of them is individual in their own journey, but largely some people have, Elon has a well-reported issue, uses a lot of drugs. He got a little bit red-pilled by COVID and that language. He didn't like the Biden administration and decided to fight back against them in a way that was really aggressive. So everyone's different. Jeff Bezos doesn't like regulation, and he wants to go to space, and therefore he's cozying up to Trump. Everybody's got and Mark Zuckerberg is just Mark Zuckerberg. He'll do whatever it takes to. Shareholders are his own, and he's the biggest one. It is his only concern. He doesn't care about, and I guess MMA fighting, but whatever.
Yeah. Do you think? Is there anyone that you see in Silicon Valley? I know you've talked about Tim Cook didn't go to the inauguration. Tim Cook.
He did. He went.
Oh, he went, but he wasn't in the front row. I think
he did. So it was a marvelous feat of engineering on his part. I bet they wanted him in the front row.
Oh, right.
No question.
And you've talked about Bill Gates quietly, kind of behind the scenes, pushing against some of what's happening. But do you see anyone?
He has now publicly. This week he's been talking about it publicly.
Is there anyone else in Silicon Valley that you see as able to do something more effective and kind of going against the grain?
So Reid Hoffman certainly had tried to. He backed Kamala Harris quite significantly, engaged to all kinds of causes, all kinds of progressive causes. You have mostly women, Lorraine Powell Jobs, Mackenzie Scott, ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, Melinda Gates, ex-wife of Bill Gates. The women are the ones that are pushing for more progressive things, and not progressive, decent things is what it is. So no, I think a lot of the people who are in charge have gotten, they want to get while the getting's good. But there's not a lot that are, Reed, I suppose. Satya Nadella is trying his best, but he's got a company to run. Same thing with people like Bob Iger at Disney or any of these people. There's only so much they can do as corporate people.
Yeah.
And they, even Sam Altman, who was an arch enemy of Elon Musk, had to show up at the inauguration. There's a price to pay if you didn't.
Mm. You talk about how Elon Musk was offended when Biden didn't invite him to an electric car summit, and that you thought that was a mistake because it wouldn't have hurt to have him in the room.
I did.
That was quite a pivotal moment for him. So what's the most effective way now, do you think, to deal with him?
Well, eventually they will deal with him in a not so great way for him. But right now, just get caught. Well, it's hard. It's hard to stop him if the president is backing him. I don't think there's anything to stop him. I think he's going to ignore the courts, and the President Trump's going to back him. I think he'll ignore everybody and do what he wants to do. This is how he behaves everywhere he goes. And, there's no right. Well, change Congress. When the Democrats get in charge, he's in a world of hurt. But until then, no. I mean, legal hurt, not personal hurt, but he's, until then, until the Democrats at least get control of one branch of government, I think he's going to run wild across the government. There's no stopping him.
What surprised you the most? I mean, it's all surprising, but what's the bit that you perhaps really wouldn't have seen?
I thought they would do this. I said they would do this. I wrote a whole book about how they would do this. So, I'm surprised that all of them went along, that every one of them went along, including people like Tim Cook. But I understand it. I certainly understand the situation. I thought maybe someone would resist, but nobody has.
Yeah. And how do you square like Elon and Tesla with drill, baby, drill? Like how's that going to play out in the end?
It doesned.
Yeah.
It doesn't square in any way. I mean, he's lost interest in Tesla. He hasn't created a new fresh car in a long time. He's getting his head handed to him. I mean, the sales are down, not just because he's a jerk and people don't want to buy his car, but it's, inevitably sales are down. There's a lot of innovative companies, including from China, BYD, but there's lots of others. And so he's not really focused on Tesla. He sees a bigger fish, AI and President Trump. Yeah. So that's what he's focused in on. So I don't know, all that virtue signaling to the climate change, I guess it didn't mean much to him. I guess he was not telling the truth, I guess. I'm not sure. But, I think his main goal is probably eventually to go to Mars, which can't happen soon enough. But it's, I think he's hypocritical. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. He's completely hypocritical.
And if we look back on, the 90s and the 2000s when you were doing the Tech Beat and you had obviously really good access to these guys, PR has kind of like increasingly made it difficult for any journalist to have access to anyone with power or money. How is it now? Like, how is it now trying to get that access? I guess you've probably still got the relationships.
I get everybody. Yeah, I get everybody. There's very few. The only person who won't talk to me is Elon Musk, but that's fine. I don't really want to talk to him. So
yeah.
But that's fine. So I can write about him. I can report all around him. So it's fine. I don't care. I don't care if I talk to people or not. I do almost better when people don't talk to me because I then go all around them and drive them crazy, and that's a pleasure. You know what I mean?
Find things out.
That's what important is. Yeah, of course. It's not that hard to.
Yeah.
But, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care. Whether I have access or not, either way works for me.
You've started your own companies. You've been quite entrepreneurial in the media space. Your two podcasts now are part of the New York Magazine's kind of group. There's a lot more of that innovation in media in America than there is here. It's kind of starting here. How's that going in America? Is it flourishing or is it difficult to kind of monetize? What's the people going out on their own Substacks, that kind of thing?
Depends on the person, but lots of people are doing well. I'm doing great. It's 20 years now. It's doing great. It's very lucrative for me. It's very lucrative for my partners and things like that. People I'm doing stuff with. we moved from an advertising-based sort of blog to events, which were really lucrative, and then podcasts, which are very lucrative. And then I just try to innovate around it. And there's lots of people like me. I mean, I think we were the first, really, or among the first. And, now you have people availing themselves to Substack if that's what they want. I would never do that. I do it on my own. I don't think much of a value add from Substack. But there's all kinds of interesting entrepreneurs. Casey Newton, who I helped figure that out. It does Platformer. He has a great business. You have Jessica Lesson at The Information. You've got all kinds of different people, even conservatives like Ben Shapiro has not my favorite content, but he's done a nice job building a business. He has commerce. He's got video. He's got all kinds of things. So, there's all kinds of really interesting stuff going on that pull you away from the corporate media environment. It's actually a pleasure to do.
And what's the biggest challenge of that, do you think? What's the thing that's been most difficult?
I think the challenge is legal. If you do anything controversial, you're subject yourself to legal challenge, which of course that's what the right wing is doing right now with media, trying to, just today there's news that guy, Steve Wynn, who's worked in Vegas, is trying to overturn a lot of our libel laws because he got mad because he did something stupid and someone wrote about it and he got mad. But there's that challenge. There's the challenge of working all the time. You have to work a lot. If you're an entrepreneur, if you work for a corporation, you can rest easy comparatively. But there's no strictures. It's just a question of your energy and your capacity to change constantly.
And I guess from America, you have the market that's not only the size of America, but the world as well, right? Like, because we're also interested in what's happening there.
Yeah, it's a global thing. So, there's certainly ample opportunity to do the same thing in Australia. There's nothing holding you back. It's just a risk tolerance that I think probably U.S. people have more than most.
And you are here for, obviously, Sydney, all about women, Melbourne, Wheeler Centre, Adelaide Writers' Week. Are you meeting with, say, Julie Inman-Grant, our e-safety commissioner, or any of the other people in Australia who are in this kind of legislative space?
I'm hoping to meet her in particular. That's my goal, to see her. I'm not there very long, but I've interviewed many times. I interviewed some of your tech entrepreneurs. I'm blanking, the Canva CEO, the one from Atlassian, stuff like that when I was there the last time. And I'm hoping to meet some of your legislators because I'm really interested in what they've done. Yeah. So hopefully.
And then AI is, I guess, the big talk of the moment, the next kind of huge thing. What do you see as, I guess, where we're going with that and the risks and the challenges and the opportunities?
Well, I think it's just there's enormous amounts of money being put into it by all kinds of companies. I think $80 billion by Microsoft this year, 60, 70 by Meta, Google spending enormous amounts of money. Lots of capital going into it. Obviously, OpenAI is getting funded. Elon Musk has his effort with XAI. So there's all kinds of efforts happening all over the place and huge funding. And the question is whether there's too much money being thrown at this. And DeepSeek sort of threw a wrench into all that. Allegedly, they made stuff for less money. We'll see where that goes. But, there's a lot of investment here. And so we're going to see a lot of innovation when there's a lot of investment.
And if you can give us some light at the end of the tunnel, re-tech, what you say Silicon Valley is utilitarian rather than kind of ideological. What give us some good kind of in
a way actually it is ideological towards the tech authoritarianism. I guess that's a religion in and of itself, that they know best. So in a lot of ways they are not political in the normal sense, but they will attach to like a virus. They'll attach to anything and exploit it. And so in this case right now, it's the Republican Party, and that's what they're doing. I was joking that if Kamala Harris won, Elon would ask us to call him they, them. Call them they, them. Just whatever it takes for these people, they would do, in a second. He'd be dancing to Charlie XCX, whatever. These people don't have any values whatsoever. So, I think we'll see what happens if our government can't restrain them. And in fact, what do you do when the government doesn't want to restrain them? it actively encourages them versus just sort of tolerates them. And I think the big mistake was even going back to what the Obama administration, never legislating these people and therefore allowing these companies to get so big. And even in AI, all of it's run by giant companies. That doesn't mean you're not going to get the most innovative things if big companies are running everything. I'm a believer in small innovation from below, not from above. And so I worry when enormous amounts of power is collected in the hands of a small group of people in any industry. And so that makes me worry that this is the case. And when it becomes attached to politics, where we started at the same time, it gets a little frightening.
So what gives you hope at this point in time? Is there anything?
Sorry. It's not a good time here in the United States, I'm sorry to tell you. I'm sure we have the Super Bowl. Great. Fantastic. My children, I have 4 kids, and I think I want them to live in a world that is free and has a democratically elected government, and it doesn't get lectured to us by tech billionaires. I think that is a place we will get to and learn our lesson. We have been through this in this country before, not this bad, but in many ways. We had that during the Gilded Age and everything else, where these billionaires would run everything. So I think it's really important to keep in mind, for my kids especially, that we've been through issues like this and we've been through them.
Do you think it's going to take a 4-year cycle, or what? Or longer?
Hopefully 2 year. Probably 2 year. You never know. The stuff they're putting into place could make elections very difficult going forward. So if we can resist the efforts they're going to make to keep themselves in permanent power, no. But if the Democrats or another party, whatever comes up, can manage to get some power within the next 2 years, in 2 years at the next elections, can certainly slow these people down. And that's the goal. I think that's the least we could do. And 4 years, we'll see, but I'm really concerned with the next 2 years, essentially.
Yeah. And where does Kara find solace? Kids aside, where do you kind of find something that allows you to kind of sleep and not just, run yourself ragged?
You caught me at a difficult time. I just was attacked by Elon Musk online, and it's not great. When the world's most famous billionaire attacks you personally online, it's not a great day to have that happen. You have all kinds of crazies coming out of the woodwork who are very threatening. What solace that we have been through this, and that our country, this is a great country. It has been a great country, not perfect, but great in many ways. And so I see the rather than the deleterious effects of tech that we're seeing now, you can see incredible strides happening around the medicine, around people's lives, around making people's lives better. And bringing the commonality to all of us, which was what I felt that was the strength at the beginning. And so I'm hoping that we could move our way back to that, where decisions aren't made for us by a small cabal of wealthy men, and that we have a society that benefits from all this going forward, which I still believe is true.
Well, that's a nice quasi-hopeful point to end on. Thank you, Kara, and we look forward to seeing you in Australia soon.
All right, thank you.
That was American journalist and podcaster Kara Swisher being interviewed by Good Weekend editor Katrina Strickland for the latest Good Weekend Talks. If you'd like to hear her live, Swisher is appearing at Adelaide Writers' Week, March 3 and 4, at All About Women in Sydney on March 5, and in Melbourne at the Wheeler Centre on March 6. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate and comment wherever you get your podcasts. And keep tuning in for more compelling conversations. Coming soon, we chat with Senator Katie Gallagher, the Federal Minister for Finance. Good Weekend Talks is brought to you by the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, proud newsrooms powered by subscriptions. To support independent journalism, search Subscribe Sydney Morning Herald or The Age. This episode of Good Weekend Talks is produced by Conrad Marshall and edited by Tim Mummery, with technical assistance from Tom Compagnoni. Our executive producer is Tammy Mills, Tom McKendrick is head of audio, and Katrina Strickland is the editor of Good Weekend.